We have Sean Rose here with the events, the news, and the stories making headlines this week in the news. So we're going to go to Sean Rose. Sean, what's happening out there in the news world?
Good evening, Ajurenka. Good evening, viewers. This evening, we're going to take a look at what happened when legislators convened for the first sitting of the second session of the Second House of Assembly, or the third session of the Second House of Assembly on Monday, where the governor unveiled what was considered to be an ambitious legislative agenda. He pointed to some 48 pieces of legislations that are expected to come in the later half of 2013, or should I say the later quarter of 2013, and also into 2014 as government seeks to stimulate the BVI economy, focusing on all sectors. In fact, the governor pointed out that in 2012, some 11 pieces of legislation were passed, and already for this year, another 13 pieces have been passed. So the government is working primarily, and what they're saying is that in the months and also in the year to come, they expect to do a lot more to basically streamline the Virgin Islands economy in light of what's happening on a global scale.
And what sort of measures or initiatives are they planning to take to improve the economic activity in the territory?
Well, in 2012, 13 pieces of legislation, they covered, for example, Customs Management and Duties Amendment Act, and one would assume that that was geared at reducing the cost of imports at the respective ports in terms of consumer goods. Whether or not that has materialized is up for debate.
Was that the legislation that allowed duties to be charged only on the invoice and not on freight and insurance?
Precisely. And then you had the Marriage Amendment Act, which was geared to ensuring that the BVI tourism sector remains competitive, and the BVI is seen as an ideal destination for marriages. That particular legislation sought to simplify the process so that it was easier for folks coming in to get married and enjoy the BVI at the same time. Reduce the red tape pretty much in the registration process.
Well, what's coming in 2014? Because we can see we haven't had much success with the reduction in duties for the businesses, and I don't know how much marriage activity we've had. There's no data being supplied to give an indication as to how those pieces of legislation have had positive impact on the economy. So I'd like to hear some more concrete things for 2014. You got any anything?
Oh, sure. There are some 48 of them. 48 acts, regulations, policies, and initiatives they are described. And one in particular, while you're on tourism, is the Hotel Aid Ordinance Cap 290, and this is quite interesting because it says basically local businesses can benefit from the sale of goods that are purchased under the grant of hotel aid. So we can glean from this that folks who are in the hotel sector are likely to import items that are to be used in this sector at what one can say a pretty low rate, or hopefully a very low rate, if not in some cases duty-free concessions. I don't want to get ahead of the legislators, but I'm just trying to basically look deep into what this is likely to offer. And that is what I suspect to be one good prospective initiative,
and
really.
So that is to make the hotels in the BVI cheaper, give a lower rate to visitors wanting to come into the BVI. Is that what that's designed to do?
I would say the same myself, because if I have an hotel and I can if I own a hotel and I can import and use items such as equipment, beds, you name it, and other measures that I can improve my structure, I am sure that would cut my overheads to some degree and would affect or should I say reduce the overall cost of hosting my guests and much drive the cost down.
The challenge always is the legislation that is geared towards helping the consumer seem to rarely get to the consumer, because the savings to the businesses is not usually passed on, or we have no evidence, or we don't measure that activity, or we don't have the data to say whether the low cost is being passed on to the consumer. Is there any legislation regarding consumer affairs and consumer protection?
Well, you know, you're asking very, very good questions. And of the 48 of them, without being able to recall all, I can tell you that there is a Pioneer Services Act and the Encouragement of Industries Act. And this is expected to be amended to improve the marketing of investment incentives and ensure the tourism sector remain competitive. So, as you point out, it's difficult to really say how these will affect the owners of these establishments at the end of the day. I suspect that would depend on the implementation processes and whether or not the application systems that have to be put in place would be convenient or accessible for all.
Okay. Anything about opening new markets? Anything about airlift expansion?
No, the initiatives are really homegrown. They have, except of course to the final one that speaks to improving relationships with regional and international destinations in terms of the overall foreign policy initiatives. All of the respective acts and legislations are geared at strengthening, in some cases too, modernizing the legislations here in the BVI, some of which have been on the card since 1972 and have not been touched. The Education Act is one that is also said to be on the cards for amendment. There is also one that looks at the health sector, at improving the quality of services offered, and of course it speaks to the NHI. It also speaks to improving the application and the systems that are in place to govern the registration of persons involved in dental care and also those who are involved in medical care on a whole, both public and
professionals.
Private. That's right. So it's far-reaching, and the extent to which we can see the benefits in dollars and cents at the end of the day would depend, I'm sure, on the capacity, the institutional capacity of the system to implement these measures after they are passed in the House of Assembly by the legislature.
It certainly seems, Sean, that the legislature is going to be busy in the next several months, in the months ahead, and hopefully we can see those pieces of legislation translate into economic growth and development. Thank you very much.
There you go. An ambitious plan, an ambitious program.
Okay, we're going to take a break for a word from our sponsors.
Spotlight is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, Clarence Thomas Limited, the BVI Tourist Board, and CCT Global Communications.